Oh, well, let's see. It is March 5th, 2024. Do I have a speech impediment? I, there is something about the FTH sound that is really tough for me. And I don't know, maybe it's the gap between the teeth, but I always say fifth instead of fifth. Does everybody say it that way? Am I overthinking this thing? I can't help it. Every time I say fifth, I don't say it the right way. I know I'm not saying it the right way. Feels weird to be realizing that at the age that I'm at this point that I might have had some kind of weird speech impediment this entire time. So, but it is the fifth, and today I was sitting there going through some movie news, going through some TV show topics. I still have to catch up on the newest episode of Shogun, which is great so far. I cannot recommend that show enough at this point. It is just outstanding. And the other day, I ran into some clips from The Office. Now, The Office is not my go-to kind of like comfort food type show. I know some people, for them, it's Friends or it's like Seinfeld as a really popular one that you'll just kind of always go to. My wife, it's Gilmore Girls. She'll go to Gilmore Girls like 2 times a year. She's gonna pop on some Gilmore Girls and she's gonna watch that. That's her comfort food. For me, it's kind of a mix. I would say between three shows that at this point I think are just the three funniest shows, at least consistently funny. I have issues with them, but I will always go to It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. I will always go to Community, and I will always go to 30 Rock. Those are kind of like the three if I'm kind of like in a lull and I don't really have a whole lot to watch, those are the ones I just like to go back to. And none of them are perfect. They absolutely have seasons and they have episodes that are just an absolute disaster. But one that used to be one for me, and it is for so many people. In fact, it used to be just like the reason you'd even have a DVD player was to just pop in The Office and just watch The Office. And I think for the longest time, that was everybody's comfort food and probably is still for a lot of people. Nowadays, I think you have to go to Peacock, which is great. Peacock kind of does these longer episodes. They're almost like these director's cuts. I forget what they call them, like fan super cuts or something like that. And there are a few scenes that pop up there that are actually pretty decent, and aren't bad. And it makes sense because when it was on TV, when it was on NBC, they used to have to make cuts to make sure that it fit within I think the 22 or 23 minutes of airtime that it had in between commercials. But you don't have to worry about that on streaming. So they're able to kind of add some additional content there. And some of those are genuinely good and they're worth checking out. But I was going through some clips on The Office, and part of it might be just the fact that I've seen The Office so many times. And some of it I think is just maybe my humor has changed a bit over the years. But I noticed that I find it less and less funny and enjoyable to watch. And again, I know I probably fall into the minority there, and there's probably plenty of people that still love The Office and go back to it all the time. But it started to kind of stick out to me, and then I started to go back in time a little bit, and remember, and I distinctly remember when Parks and Rec came out. They specifically and especially like in that time, everybody wanted to replicate what The Office was doing. So this whole kind of like documentary style comedy, I felt like it got super popular, and we just got a bunch of that stuff. Even to this day, What We Do in the Shadows, which I absolutely love, very much follows suit with that kind of mentality of like a documentary crew following around a group of people, and hijinks ensues. Um, but I remember when Parks and Rec came out, it had similar people that created and worked on The Office. He was really coming to where it was coming closer to the tail end of The Office. The Office, I think, kind of knew that it was getting close to those years where it was going to need to, that it was probably coming down to its last final seasons. Because obviously a show can't last forever unless you're The Simpsons. If there's any lesson that we've learned at this point. So they start to wind it down, and we get introduced to Parks and Rec. Again, great crew. Amy Poehler put into the middle of it, and they posted this right after The Office would finish. So The Office would finish, we'd move right into Parks and Rec. And I remember not loving Parks and Rec when it first came out, and it took a while for that to kind of get going. It took a while for it to be funny, and it felt like the writers took a minute to get their groove. I have a rule when it comes to TV shows. I give you 3 episodes. Like you kind of have to get me somewhere in those first 3 episodes, or I'm not likely to keep going with it, because I don't like having an exercise in just pain and just going and sitting and watching something that I'm not enjoying, that I'm hating it, and I want nothing to do with it. So I give you 3 episodes. You gotta have something that's gonna hook me, and I'm not saying it has to be perfect, but it's just gotta hook me. It's gotta give me a reason to come back to this. And it fortunately did do that. Now, obviously, I think in the grand scheme of it, I actually think we have more iconic characters that come out of Parks and Rec. Comedy characters that we love a lot more than we do than The Office. Like, I think Chris Pratt obviously ends up becoming probably the biggest star to come out of that show. His character, Andy, I think, as kind of the dumb, bumbling, lovable idiot, is a far more funny character than Dwight Schrute. I like him a whole lot more. If you're looking at the stern, kind of gruff, because all these characters are archetypes, like, right? They're all like this specific type of person. They don't necessarily have to have the same types of roles in a show. Like, they're not the same in their same locations, but they're very similar in their kind of build. Who's better? Was it Stanley or gosh, I'm gonna draw a blank here. Ron Swanson. I don't know why I could not remember the name of Ron Swanson, which is totally going to defeat the purpose of what I'm saying. But is Stanley or Ron the better kind of grumpy, don't bother me, leave me alone kind of character? Again, they've all got these similar kind of setups. I would argue Ron Swanson is more enjoyable. I enjoy watching him, and I find him consistently more funny. And these shows you don't necessarily have to pick one over the other. Obviously, you can enjoy both of these things. There's nothing that says you have to enjoy one over the other. There isn't. But it's fun to debate these types of things. I think Aziz ends up really showing up big on that show. He's great. I love Retta, especially when they really kind of let her character shine a little bit. And the show gets better when they introduced Adam Scott's character and Rob Lowe's character. It just gets better. Doesn't get worse. And that felt, again, like you were coming more towards the end of the life cycle of that show. And it's still, those are 2 great characters, and they made the show better. They actually, where The Office, I think, really failed in that. I think especially once you started to lose Michael Scott, gosh, I mean, you can even make the argument that Andy doesn't necessarily help the show. I don't think Andy's character was ever a really enjoyable character. So there's plenty of episodes that I love from The Office. The Office was a great show. So I'm not going to sit here and talk trash about what am I clicking? I'm clicking all sorts of stuff right now. But I do think there's a lot of merit there. I do think there's a lot of merit in Parks and Rec actually being a far more consistent show. I think its arc is just better. Also, not necessarily related to if it's a better show or if it's a better comedy. There is one specific element that I've always thought about these shows and what actually made Parks and Rec better than The Office. And it's this one thing, and again, you're going to look at this, you're going to say it's really stupid. That's a really stupid thing to kind of measure on. But that is the wedding episodes. Pam and Jim, that was kind of the whole through line, right? You want to see these characters end up together. You want to see them married. You want to see them have family. You want to see them have kids. That's part of the progression story. The wedding feels like it's such like an important and iconic moment. I hate the wedding episode from The Office. I love the wedding episode with Adam Scott and Amy Poehler in Parks and Rec. I think they did a better job of kind of honoring these two characters and making that a fun and interesting episode. Well, maybe not interesting, but at least special. It feels special. Where I don't know why it's never felt that good for Pam and Jim in The Office. So if I'm wrong, tell me why I'm wrong. When we are comparing these two shows, obviously there was a massive titan in here, and that is Michael Scott's character is obviously a massive character, a great character, one of the greatest comedy characters ever created. And again, everybody wanted to follow that type of method and or that formula. They all wanted to have a Michael Scott type character, and that's all thanks to Steve Carell. So, I'm not going to sit here and try and knock down his performance. In fact, I say that The Office really almost solely depended on him, and when he left, in my opinion, that show got considerably worse. Considerably worse. I don't think they had a good replacement plan for him, obviously. And the show really suffers for it. It really does suffer for it. So, yeah, I can break down some of my favorite comedies and where they all start to fail. I pretty much cannot watch anything after season 12 of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. It's just unwatchable to me. It's so bad. So bad. 30 Rock stays pretty good for most of it. I think there's some in the final seasons. This is what happens in all of my comedies. It's either the final season or it's the final couple of seasons where they meander because they don't know how to close that thing out, and it just feels that way. It feels kind of awful to watch. But let's see. What is everybody watching these days? Anybody got anything good or some recommendations that they think I should go out and check? I know our cheap dollar theater here just added Wonka. I have not watched Wonka yet. I don't know if anybody else has watched it yet. It obviously did great in the box office. It's number one in the box office for the year so far. That might actually have already changed. They actually might have just surpassed it here with yesterday's numbers. Mean Girls also came out to our dollar theater here. I believe that's also available on Paramount Plus. Paramount Plus is one of the few streaming services I don't have and have very little interest in going in picking that up, with the exception of it would be cool to watch the Mission Impossible films again. I love pulling those. Talk about comfort food. Mission Impossible movies are always pretty good to just kind of pop on and enjoy. which I do miss those days. I still kinda get that feeling, and I'm a bit older than probably a lot of people that would check out this stream or check out this video. Um, but I miss on a Saturday evening, just being able to scroll through, cable networks and finding random movies on there, and there was, like, a benefit to that, and this is the the paralyzing feeling of having too much choice. I have too many streaming options with too many movies on there that it makes me feel like every time I open one of them up that A, I need to pick the right movie, and B, is no point in rewatching something. Like I should be watching something new pretty much at all times because of how the content is kind of churning out. What was nice about not having to make that choice, being able to kind of scroll through different channels and cable networks and just finding something and putting it on was you really got introduced to a bunch of new stuff. I remember distinctly, man, this almost feels like the last thing I ever watched. Watching Alien versus Predator, which was an awful movie, and it was kind of funny to watch it. I was never going to put that on ever. I was never going to go out of my way and put that on because I had heard it was bad, and truthfully, Alien versus Predator isn't necessarily stuff that I was gonna, be running to anyway. It's not, my type of content, but it was on, and I was blown away and was happy that I saw it. It was the perfect thing to just lounge on a couch, just completely veg out, have something playing on in the background that I don't have to think about much. I don't have to put a whole lot of attention into it. I did. I was entranced by that movie because it was so bad. But I didn't have to. I didn't have to do that. Um, so that's just I think about that stuff way more, way more than I should. Um, let's go ahead and take a look at some of this stuff. I don't know where you're watching this. I don't know if you're watching this. I'm currently streaming in 4 different areas. So you could be anywhere right now. You could be watching me here on Rumble. You could be watching me here on YouTube. You could be watching me on Twitch. And you could be watching me on X, formerly known as Twitter. Let's see. Now, a long time ago, I used to run a kind of like movie review page on YouTube. It's just a channel with my name on it. I haven't done reviews in a very very long time. I kind of miss that. I kind of wish it was something that I had stuck with, but I decided to kind of give that all up and instead go to work on a podcast. So me and a buddy, we created a podcast and called Screen Test. Originally, it was called Real Movie Talk. What am I doing here? How do I? I should have muted that, but oh my gosh, what did I do? I apologize. I should not have sneezed with a microphone open like that. It's getting to springtime, and it's getting warm here. So I'm slowly dying. I am dying with all this. But yeah, if any of you if any of you were fans of Screen Test or Real Movie Talk, uh, thank you guys for still joining in. I think the plan is, at least at some point, um, I would love to be able to get back and do some of that Real Movie Talk or Screen Test podcast content again with Chaz. I think it'd be great to get him on an episode and talk movies like we used to. That was a lot of fun. It was kind of a nice little hobby to have. So we had a lot of good times doing that, and um, I'd love to be able to get back to that someday. So we'll see. We'll see if that's something we could do in the future. Um, but if you are watching this content and would love to get in on the conversation, I would love to have you as well. Please, either jump in when we go live. So wherever you're at, if you want to join in on the conversation, that'd be great. I would love to be able to do something like that. So, let's see here. I would love to go and also do kind of a, maybe an early reaction, early review of the new show on Hulu for anyone that hasn't seen it, Shogun. I can't stop talking about it because it's probably the best kind of adult drama out there right now. I love every minute of it. So I would love to kind of do a first early reaction of that as well and put that out on out onto all of my channels. So I don't really have much more to go over today. So again, if you would like to join in the conversation, please jump in here. Go ahead and hit subscribe, hit like wherever you're at. That stuff is always going to be a massive help. I want to get better at this. I want to continue to grow this content and develop it over time. So wherever you are at right now, whether you're watching us on X, Twitch, YouTube, or Rumble, go ahead and drop a comment down there. I would love to hear some feedback and address that feedback. That's the fun part of this whole process. I don't want it just to be a me talking to a camera. I want to talk to people. So until next time, we'll see you then.